Good morning, Michael.
What were you pointing at there? You're really pointing over there to the side of the screen.
To you, you big dope. So
Hi, everybody.
I'm the big dope. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm trying something new today to see if we can stream from Telegram, because in case you don't know, YouTube decided that they were going to remove us. And I'm always trying to find different ways.
Yeah, I just got a notification. It's streaming on Telegram.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Girl's daughter, bless your heart. I was just teasing you, sir. I actually felt bad about that all day. I was like, I hope she didn't take that wrong, because I was just teasing. I promise I was, but I'm very glad that you're here. So you did get it. Okay. Because what I was trying to figure out was, do you remember we tried streaming from Telegram before and I couldn't get it to mute because there's not a mute button on Telegram? And so it was playing the same thing and it was just creating this big echo. So apparently they now have a button on it. You have to leave. I can't see who's on it or watching. So if you're watching on Telegram, God bless you. This is the first time that we're doing this. And if you have a question, too bad, because I can't see it. But at least you can watch. So that's about the best I can do today. So now we're live on Telegram and Instagram that I have to push all the buttons for. But hey, I mean, at least it'll, maybe we'll catch some new people.
Well, after that last YouTube censoring that we had, I mean, we have to have avenues to archive all your work all these years, Jenny. And that's what's so sad about that whole YouTube deal. I mean, even though, yes, you did the appeal, you got the channel back, but look at the history that you have on that channel. And for them to just strike it like they did is...
I know, and I don't even know how to move it over to something else. So anybody who's watching, if you've got an idea, let me know, because I mean, some of the videos that are on that YouTube channel, they're not anywhere else, because we didn't have a place for them all the way back in the 20 teens. So, but oh God, that made me so mad. So I was like, well, I guess if we can get some other people on and let's just try Telegram and see what happens. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm so excited about today's show. What about you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Dr.
And
Snyder,
I was, do what?
I said Dr. Snyder for sure.
So I was talking to Dr. Snyder before we came on, and I just didn't realize until we started talking how much it dovetails with what we did on Wednesday with Andrew Pudwa. So I really think for those of you who were here on Wednesday for our marvelous, phenomenal discussion with Andrew Pudwa, and as soon as I get 5 minutes, I'm going to go back and pull those clips because there were some great clips from Pudwa.
Yeah. Well,
he sure did smack the education establishment good.
And like you and I were talking after that show, imagine a guy like that being the state superintendent.
I know.
I mean, imagine what would happen to the education system with a guy like that, with his knowledge, the business that he's built, the expertise that he has. in teaching and education and you know, outside the norm, the regular norm of this disgusting system we call public education. Think about it, if a guy like that was head of your education in your state, it'd be unbelievable.
I mean, it really would. It really would. But I think Eric's kind of the same way, and we'll talk to him more about that too, because I think he's got a similar perspective that Andrew has. And maybe we ought to start a campaign. I mean, I don't know why we couldn't just start a campaign to get one of those two elected as superintendent, because but then the education establishment would not have it, because the idea isn't to educate kids anyway. So, I mean, Who knows? Well, let's bring Mr. Eric on this morning, Dr. Eric on this morning, and talk to him. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Thrilled to be here. What an honor, a badge of honor. YouTube prison for you both. That means you're over the target. That means you're talking too much truth for individuals. So,
man, I'll tell you that I think the thing that I'm still pretty stuck on my thesis about what happened, and that is somebody reported us for something on our channel because they didn't like what we said and were trying to get us removed. It's the only thing that makes any sense, because it happened so fast. And then, I sent in the response going, hey, wait a minute. I don't think this is right. And they were like, oh yeah, sorry. Flip the switch back on. It just happened too fast. I think somebody put in a complaint, and instead of researching it, they just shut the channel down and then went.
Yeah. We'll definitely need to archive them offline. You got to pull them off in some capacity.
I know. I just don't even know how, though.
A lot of people have transitioned. I know a few that are in similar scenarios. And so using Podbeam and some others and Rumble to pull those off in order to upload them elsewhere so that you can archive offline and then have those documented in case it happens again. Because the problem is if they remove you multiple times, then you don't even get to get it back. And so you might want to focus on that a little bit.
I know, but the problem is,
like Michael said, you don't want all of the hard work just erased, right? And so if you don't have it archived, you're not going to be able to upload it again.
That was a lot of years.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, Rumble is terrible. I mean, Rumble really stinks on ice. They're so bad.
Yeah. Well, we got to.
I mean, they wouldn't even let me upload your picture.
They can put kids on computers all day long and it's efficient and works no matter what. But when it comes to having a technology stream that allows for autonomy and freedom of expression and speech, it's unavailable to the public.
Nope. Robert said, definitely somebody needs to start mass reporting your YouTube channel.
Thanks, Robert.
Oh, wait, somebody started mass reporting your. Yes, I think I'm with you, Robert. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So, Dr. Snyder, we had you on
maybe
a couple of months ago now to talk about the debt clock, and it was a great show. So many people loved it. We had a huge audience for the debt clock show.
Sure.
But you and I have been talking about, it's insane, but it definitely happens. It's because the kids are their target. I agree with that. Yeah. So you and I were talking, you were like, I have this magazine and we're really trying to push this out. And I was like, no, you don't. We started talking back and forth. And so I'm going to share the screen because you've got an actual magazine there, but I want to share the screen with your, the website. Oh, and it's such a pretty magazine too. Okay.
Real hard copy, not
real hard copy.
Yeah.
Essential.
Yes. And we'll talk more about that in a second if my Wi-Fi doesn't go unstable. Don't you do it. Okay. So here is Red, White, Blue, a magazine for thinkers. And it's a really nice website. And it talks to you about this is what some of them look like. Here's how you can subscribe to the magazine. You can get bulk. So like, for example, if you are watching and you're running a small school, or if you run a small school or something, you can actually go and get bulk prices from them. So you can do what we had when Michael and I were kids and we got Weekly Reader. Didn't you love that, Michael?
Yes.
I
Michael's
loved
favorite thing.
Weekly Reader.
He just didn't have red, white, and blue. That's a distinction.
I think that's well back in the day when I was a kid, Weekly Reader was fun, and they did have some good information in there. And it was like every week you were like, Weekly Reader's coming, Weekly Reader. It was pretty exciting. And now it's all woke garbagey crap. But anyway, so here's the CEO.
Yes,
and
incredible.
Yeah, how did you meet her?
Yeah, Providence is always what I say, right? Rachel and I have been friends now for probably 2 years. She was the editor at George Magazine for a brief time when they did version 2.0. And I randomly had reached out about the deck clock. And so I started writing some articles for Rachel. And then we connected kind of instantly because she has an 8-year-old and 11-year-old, and I have a 7 and 5-year-old. And I'd been in the educational sector as the head of school for the last 10 years. And so we just started talking and philosophically really aligned. And I know she had been dreaming about starting her own magazine for a while. And I think I was part of the catalyst of pushing her to like, let's do this. Like you won't get there unless you start. And so we're able to get the trademark for it. And she has a good eye, I think, for detail and creation. And then just between our connections of authors and individuals that are in education or in faith-based positions, we were able to really put a great team together that started to pilot the magazine. So we are in our 4th month. And really, to be honest with the viewers, it took 3 months to get everything ironed out on the detail side of it. There's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, from literally the paper size you're going to use because it's for kids. They're writing in it. They're doing activities in it. You want it to be durable because they're tossing it around. So just a lot of those pieces became essential. And we then launched it, and we've been just trying to get the word out about it. We really were somewhat hesitant that first 2 months because we needed to make sure that our assembly and basically our ability to automate it was completed. And we finally got to that point where we're not stuffing envelopes. So that's been exciting, I think, for Rachel, for sure, and myself, of now it's taken care of. We just get to create the content, and that goes out to the printers. They stuff the envelopes. They can mail it to kids who do get extremely excited about receiving mail.
Well, yeah, you do. I mean, and honestly, I was so excited when you talked about this. I'm not kidding. And like I put it up a second ago, Julia likes Weekly Reader too.
Yeah.
I got so excited about it when I was a kid. It was so thrilling to have that. And for a little while Sam did Lego magazine, and he was so excited to get Lego magazine. They're just so excited to have something that's theirs, and it's coming just for them. And it's can you tell a story about your daughter? Do you mind?
Yeah. So, well, I have 2. I mean, there's been subscribers that have texted me, which certainly encourages you to keep going. And I share that with our team just so that they know we are having an impact already. But, the idea of every month my daughter gets something in the mail. So she just received her September issue, which is honoring the past. And it was a big deal, right? It comes in the mailbox, and she's so excited, and she knows it's hers, and her brother's jealous because he's not quite where, he's utilizing the magazine. He's a little younger. But she immediately opens it up. There's one part of it that's about dogs. So we've done the Posidential Pets. And so we have a friend that
Posidential. That's
Nicole
great.
Bell is an incredible artist. She actually paints the dogs on the presidential portrait, so who their dog was, and it tells a little story. So the kids have to guess which president that was in the time, but it gives them more of that intimate connection because, as many of you know, our animals are also our family. So she does
Unless
that
you have
part. So my
5
daughter
of them
goes-
like I do, and
Yeah.
you don't care after a while.
Yeah, she goes straight to the pets part of the magazine. But just the idea of having her own, and if she's in a room at night getting ready for bed, she'll look through it. It sits by her bed. That is very different than having a computer screen in front of her. And we have that iPad version for some individuals, but that's somewhat not the purpose of the magazine. The purpose is to get it in the physical hands of kids, get them reading, get them touching it, get them doing activities, and then engaging the whole family in the magazine's information. Because the age range can vary, as you both know. Some kids in 6th grade or that are 6 years old are reading at a 3rd grade level, and they could consume the entire magazine, or a 6th grade level, and they can read it. Others are going to struggle. So it requires parents to get involved and read some of the stories to them. And then a lot of the activity side of it is setting goals for them, whether it's monthly or yearly, to accomplish tasks that connect us to the outdoors, that connect us to educational experiences that I think are omitted in the school sector. So it's filling that gap.
So you and your daughter were reading.
Yeah, so this is actually a friend of mine that texted me that. So a friend of mine and their daughter are reading the magazine. They get through the magazine. I don't want to misquote, but so I can actually just read what was said to them. They said, "Last night while reading Red, White, and Blue, my child enjoyed the really awesome discussion of President McKinley." There's a piece about McKinley and each president in each one that led to a conversation about other presidents. She really got into talking about why she loves being an American. And of course, she loved the story about Jake. Jake was the rescue dog at 9/11. So there's a painting of Jake in this month's issue that Nicole did. And it tells the story of when he was rescued in Utah, and then he went to basically where the World Trade Center disaster happened, and was there for therapy, and also saved many lives in the rubble of it. So,
oh, wow.
She says, then after we finish the section on the armor of God, we have a faith-based article in each issue, really connecting to virtue and morality, because that spiritual side of the educational it's still important, whether you're homeschooling, whether you're in public ed, private education. A lot of it was about removing that spiritual side. But she actually said, she asked if they could pray together. So we did. We've never done that as a family. It was one of the most precious and special moments that I've had with my child. Just wanted to pass this along to you and your colleagues, and thank you all. The work you're doing is far bigger and reaches far deeper than the words on the page. So,
isn't that lovely?
Yeah, pretty impactful, and grateful that the parent shared that with us, because you don't really know, right? The magazine goes out to a few hundred people right now, and we hope it grows to thousands of American kids. But it's clear that if they do take the time and they engage in the material, it can be very rewarding for the family.
Hold on. Give me 1 second.
You're good.
So when you, just out of curiosity, so it was your friend's idea to go ahead and start the magazine, and you just kind of played the cattle prod.
Yeah, so I was definitely part of the cattle prod of encouraging her to go down that road. I think part of Rachel's concern was she's a parent, but she didn't have an educational background, which always is a bit disheartening. Even I know a lot of homeschool parents that feel that way, right? They have that overwhelming sensation of like, what can I offer to this sector? I don't have the educational background or the credential. And so I told her, I'm like, well, then I'll be the credential. If you need just an acronym by the name, that's perfectly fine. But I think that the team we've assembled has really fostered her being confident in moving forward, because each play a role in developing it out.
Well, I think when people see it, because Earl's daughter said, looks amazing. I just bought a membership. I'll check it out. If my kiddos enjoy it, I'll subscribe. What a great idea. And she also said she'd pass it on to her whole homeschool group. And then, what you said about that was huge and powerful. And I think that once people do start seeing this, there's such a void I mean, I haven't been a kid mom in a long time. But even when toward the end of my kids' years, my kids' years, it was getting to be a struggle to find something for them to read that wasn't just, well, I'm going to say it like this, horrifying, because
Sure.
you'd get something and it would be, you'd have this kind of nice story and it'd be like, oh, this is kind of fun. Highlights magazine even got like that.
Yep.
Where you'd be like, oh, look, let's find the thing. And then you turn the page and it would be something about, we love everyone. And, even our transgender friends or something. And you're like, how did that happen? How'd that get in there?
Yeah, it's certainly, in my experience, being in the actual sector for the past 10 years, I even watched it evolve from 2015 to 2024, just in looking through, let's say, the Scholastic Book Fair, looking through McGraw-Hill textbooks. And what many viewers may not understand, and your audience might be far more educated about it, but all of these entities, all these corporate entities are intertwined, and the monetary support is also intertwined through the Department of Education, through the accrediting agencies. And there's a tremendous control on the access to information and then dissemination of that information out to colleges of education, to faculty and teachers, where they certainly have an agenda attached to it. And if you don't understand the accrediting world, I used to actually write papers on it when I was in higher ed. Prior to the Department of Education, there were independent accrediting agencies at the state level or at the regional level who really didn't even have certification by the federal government to function, but the trust was rooted in those educational experts to say, hey, this content's appropriate. And a lot of times that was geared towards this individual states, their economies, their local economies, what was important for their development, what would be important for the workforce, what would be important for their entrepreneurial efforts. And as we've seen a shift to the standardization, not just of Common Core, but the entire educational system, where the accrediting agencies are accredited by the federal government, who then dictates the funding mechanisms of the accrediting agencies, who then dictate the funding mechanisms of the schools. They just grab the hold of all of that, and they're not letting go of that power, right? So the only way to try to break into it is to give alternative content and educate the population on why that would matter and how that can impact their kids positively. And so firsthand, I'm really not, Michael, I don't know if you would agree, but I'm really not a remove a book type of person, especially as individuals become adults. I think developmental stage is critical in that conversation. You can't exclude that. But as you go into higher ed, academic freedom, those types of things, to, entertain ideas doesn't exactly scare me by any means. The problem is when it trickles down into the lower developmental ages, and really parents aren't aware. Most are working, way more than even probably our parents of the past. Their productivity levels are up, but they're not engaged every evening and seeing everything that their kids exposed to. And so as the head of school, the last 3 years, I literally had to go through the book fair, and I would remove certain books that just for the community I was in were very inappropriate. And I don't think there would have been a parent within the community that would have disagreed. And I never made that like a public conversation with anybody, but it just shocked me of how they were able to get into that arena. And the irony would be, if you tried to get red, white, and blue into that arena, it's like, absolutely not. There would be a reason, right?
See, that's the problem.
Yeah. So there's no counterbalance to it. And so we have to independently come up with those ideas and encourage people to support those independent business owners and those independent educators that are providing great homeschool curriculum. I didn't listen to your podcast with Andrew, but it seems like he's spot on with, especially on the writing side, having that available to families to understand how important it is to development of their kid.
Well, and I'm going to make it the same point with you that I made with Andrew yesterday, because you're both in the same boat on this. Having a red, white, and blue magazine, and let's flesh this out a little bit more, but having a magazine that has a more realistic, grounded in truth basis versus something that is ideological and kind of runs with the tide of society, however bad that is.
Sure.
However far off the cliff we're going, they just keep going with society. So having something that a kid can touch that's grounded in truth, that's something that they can share with a parent, that has historical bases. So let's think about it. So they're learning how to read, because don't forget, and I know you know this, Eric, I'm talking to everybody. Sure. Don't forget, when you read to your kid, you're helping your kid learn to read. It goes both ways. I mean, yes. They recognize some of the words that you say. You can even point some of those out. So they're learning how to read. They're getting history. They're getting truth. They're getting a moral compass. They're having something in their hand that they can touch. And how many studies, well, we'll just say a lot of studies out there show, and I would say not just indicate, I would say show that the tactile experience helps connect the brain, the neurons in the brain, to make it function to remember things. So while you're on a computer, you're not getting the same neural pathways developing that you are if you're sitting here. I've got here's my magazine and I'm reading. Oh, look, I can write something in it. That really, this brain paper connection is huge. And I think that's one of the reasons why the technologists are eschewing reading material and trying to get us all onto a pad or a screen, because they know that it doesn't work as well. So sure. Develop.
Yeah.
Eric, there's zero question that the screen time impacts not just the brain development of the child, but also the hormonal balance of the child. And that's probably one of the biggest catalysts I saw shift in my time in education, is just this movement from reading a book in your hand to literally having a device at all times in your hand. And the irony of that is, as I would tell parents, because it was always a peer pressure conversation, right? And so we educate our kids all the time. Don't fall victim to peer pressure. You need to stand up. But as parents, we call it institutional isomorphism in higher ed, where the institutions adopt what other institutions do because they think they're missing out on what life should be like, or as opposed to being their unique selves. And that matters in a larger scale. It's actually the importance of red, white, and blue, because the individual is paramount too. As parents, I tell them their child can't go buy a cell phone until they're 18. So they can't buy cigarettes till they're 18, right? Or they can't buy alcohol till they're 21. Why would you then go out and give them that? The only way they can get access to it is through you. You have to approve that. And then for schools to go down the route to use it through computers, it's actually a very interesting conversation that probably needs to be had at a larger level in legislative basis, because you know that the devices themselves are impacting their cognitive development long term. And if you look at kids, this is why I would always encourage at the school I was at, you can go outside every day. You can go outside every single day. If you look at kids that are outdoors, that are in the mud, that are reading out, you can read outside, right? How can you not read outside? It's like, go outside. The teacher can go outside. Well, in our school systems, it's like, that's so frowned upon. You're not permitted to go outside. So if you do the opposite of what that education is telling you to do, it tends to work out very well in your favor. And I would say you're going to develop kids that are independent learners. They are thinkers, which is the purpose. It's a magazine for thinkers. It's not to indoctrinate in any way. It's to get them to think, to be naturally curious, to have that drive to want to know answers and want to pursue truth that you're trying to develop out, as opposed to, I tell you this and this is what you should know. And don't ever question me. I'm a doctor. I know what I'm talking about. And that's a dangerous premise to go down.
Okay, so. Anthony Fauci.
Yeah, I mean it's somewhat offensive maybe to my colleagues that have worked hard for their diplomas, but it's actually the truth, and I make that joke a lot of times in my own family circle. Like, trust me, I'm a doctor, and it's like they don't trust me because they grew up with me, right? They're like, your brain didn't change, Eric.
Okay, you got to read this one. So this is our friend Representative Gabe Woolley, but he was also an educator for many, many years. I was reprimanded by my school admin when I took my students outside for learning.
Gabe, I have heard story after story, and even from public teachers that came over to the private sector, of those types of reprimanding that occurred. And for a lot of my colleagues would tell me there's just no way I would survive in public ed for a single day. And I'm like, but if you're telling me I wouldn't survive there, then why did you for so long? Because you know what's right for kids. You know what's right. So if you want to take them outside, take them outside. Like, it's okay.
You just stepped on Michael's line.
What does Michael say?
Say your line about what, I mean, teachers. We've talked about this 100 million times.
Which one? I got a million lines.
Well, no,
teachers.
you know how we were talking about why are there teachers that don't stand up? I mean, if they're such great teachers and why don't they stand up?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which line you're talking about.
Well, you remember there was an issue where somebody was texting something inappropriate and you couldn't get the people who knew about it to say anything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, I mean,
oh, well, a lot of it's fear. That's the fear of litigation is always the major avenue. When I would give tours at the school I was at, I always wanted to do that as the head so that the parents had direct access to me, because if you don't have direct access to your leadership in your school setting and you're sending the most precious parts of your life, your children, to spend the majority of their life being raised by others, whether we want to admit it or not, you certainly have to be able to trust the top and know that that's going to trickle down into the faculty and staff that are representing the school. But I would do tours with those parents and basically be very honest with them about, one, we're going to teach the top and remediate upwards. That actually uplifts the entire educational sector. Two, we had a zip line on campus. I was very honest. That means that your child may get hurt. We inspect it. We look at it, every other week. We check it to make sure it's safe. We do all these things. But if the joys of childhood and learning are a part of their life, them having access to this on a campus that allows them to walk through is essential. And if you're a litigious person, I would just tell them honestly, one, I'm okay if I lose my job and you want to sue me, if that means the kids can be outdoors and enjoying their life and learning in a robust environment with teachers that really care and have autonomy to develop them. And I think that was pretty impactful for parents, because a lot of times it would be the opposite, right? You can be outside for 15 minutes. You can't take them outside after that. Recess is 20 minutes daily. I mean, just imagine being a 5 or 7-year-old and you're sitting in that chair all day. It's pretty brutal.
But then let's point out that we have so many kids on all kinds of drugs now.
Yeah.
Because they're vibrating because they need to get out of a chair, not because there's something wrong with them. And yet we medicate them because they have something wrong with them. We are going in such a wrong direction. It's not even funny. And I wanted to show you a couple of these comments really quickly because they're so good. Modern academia is written for the flesh, inspiring only superficial desires and feelings. Gosh, is that not true, really? Yeah. We need something that inspires deeper meaning and thought for our children. I don't know how many treatises, articles, whatever, I've written about a need to get outside because you cannot connect with God on a screen. I mean, I guess you could, but he created all of this world.
Yep.
You find him in his creations, and I'm not sure that he would consider this one of his creations. You know, I don't know, maybe
Sure.
but I think being outside, you know, is the best thing. Julia says Marxism and socialism have proved to be colossal failures all over the world, as Frederick Bastiat wrote in his classic, The Law, just prior to his death. Let us now try liberty. And I think that's what you're trying to do with this magazine, which I really appreciate. So true. And more. Years ago, the elementary school and junior high my kids went to had an outdoor reading garden. They turned it into concrete after COVID.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting to even read that and think about the movement in grounding. I'm sure both of you are aware of grounding, but you know, the idea that concrete disconnects us because the resonance and the frequencies of Earth don't even navigate through it, right? And so if you're on the grass, if kids are on the grass, if you're playing in grass, it actually has a healing effect on the body. And that data is very clear. If people want to deny that now, the research is finally coming out where they're exposing it just with let's say something like inflammation, right? So they took nursing home patients, took their shoes off, put them out in the courtyard in the grass, and reduced swelling and inflammation by 40% without any medical interventions. That type of data is unbelievable. So, you know, you put rubber soles on those shoes. You can't take them off when you're at school ever. You can't run through the grass. And that mindset is just fascinating, right? I mean, especially if it's geared towards a fear of, oh, they're going to get hurt. It's like that you can't live in fear like that. You need to do what's best and allow the child to develop.
No, but I do think that was partly, I mean, it's just my opinion, but I do believe that was partly what COVID was for, was to scare people. I mean, we started doing that years ago. You have to wear a seatbelt or you're going to die. Okay.
Always go back to Thomas Jefferson. He wrote New Hampshire's constitution, so you don't have seatbelt laws, which is very interesting. If you want to read probably the best state constitution, New Hampshire is definitely a model for everybody to check out. But Thomas Jefferson was also very much into the natural world, which again, in red, white, and blue, like we put workouts in there for families. You can do them, right? So there's a workout every month that you can do the activities. It sets out 4 weeks. And so we try to encourage them all the time to do it outdoors. You can jump rope in the grass, right? You can do push-ups and sit-ups in the grass with your kids. You can play certain games. So it's really trying to push that margin to get families and communities more engaged in that aspect of the one-on-one outdoor learning and the importance of it.
Well, we have a nice big audience now. So show the magazine again, would you please?
Yeah, this is September's issue, Honoring the Past. Next month is actually Back to the Future issue, which will be really cool. These are some of the other ones.
Just show so flip through the inside too, so people can see the inside.
Like this would be the original.
Heavy duty.
They are definitely great paper, so kids can draw on them.
10 fun facts about your brain. Give me one fun fact.
One is brains grow fast. A baby's brain triples in size during the first year and reaches 90% of adult size by age 6.
What kid wouldn't be interested in that? Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Let's see. There's the lost sheep.
Oh.
So there's a faith-based article. Just gives some, the CIA and American media.
Well, now that's interesting. What is that about?
Gives a little history of the development of the CIA, 1947. It was developed to help spy on other countries that were planning to harm America, right? So just giving the kids the background through the 1950s and 70s. It talks a little bit about Project Mockingbird, which I'm sure you two are aware of, but it just enough to spark the curiosity. And if they want to delve more into that, parents can. And then there was the famous quote that JFK said about splintering the CIA into
1,000 pieces.
Yeah, 1,000 pieces. So just important American history. This is just an activity of solar s'mores. So how to
How
develop
fun
that
is
out.
that?
Yeah. Let me see. There's other ones here. This was our back to school issue. The kids got their shades on. They're ready to go. And we did red, white, and blue vertically. That's an important point because we're moving upwards, right? The United States is we're on a trajectory upwards. As much as it's easy to be negative, I'm more of an optimist that this is turning around and it's happening pretty quickly. So,
well, I'm hopeful. I'm not an optimist anymore, but I'll be hopeful.
I always like the letters from the readers. So every month, if individuals get the subscription, they can write in, and then we put the kids' letters. And we've just kept the same topic of basically what being an American means to our kids. So this one wrote, it's pretty funny actually. I'll read it. I love being an American for a lot of different reasons. One of them is freedom. America might not be 100% free, but it's a whole lot better than North Korea, which I found pretty funny that the kid wrote that. Another thing I love about America is our military. The military protects our country and helps keep us safe. But overall, spending time with family is one of my favorite parts of America. And so they drew a little drawing, and then they submitted that.
Good drawing.
It is a good drawing.
Quite a good drawing.
Yeah. So, if people are interacting, they can send those in, and we'll put every month, we'll put some in, support them. How to earn money before school might begin, giving them some activities there for a car wash, or this is the workout. So is jump roping. And so it kind of lays that out.
Well, I love the graphics. It's laid out so well, Eric.
Yes.
How adorable is that?
This is kind of getting them on schedule. Routine certainly matters for kids too.
Yes.
Circadian rhythm. We know a lot of the research there. So we try to put goals where they can sit down with parents. And one of my favorite parts of the issue this month is actually they're to interview their parents. So it encouraged them to interview their parents and ask their parents about a time in life that was tough for them. A lot of times we don't talk about those personal struggles with our kids, but they need to know that not everything came easy to all of us. I mean, I know you two are both completely perfect, but
well, me, not Michael, but me.
Yeah. Yes.
Lauren would agree, Jenny.
Not sure about Michael, but sharing that with your kids and when you've gone through tough times and how you've acted sets a standard for them of how they should act and carry out from a character development. So
okay, we've got a couple of, one person says need a copy. So I'm going to show Red, White, and Blue magazine again. So you're just going to go to redwhitebluemagazine.com. I'm going to put that in. And then if you just go to the front page, basically it tells you how to subscribe to this. And again, if you're running a school, if you're a part of a school and you're like, hey, I would like us to get these for our kids. Here you go.
How about a
right
doctor's
here.
office, Jenny? How about a subscription at a doctor's office, pediatrician's office?
We've had people put them in their churches. So we've had people purchase subscriptions to send it to their church because a lot of times you'll have Bible study for kids or separate classes. So it's a great resource to have there every month for the kids to look through. And so there's a lot of options. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't have any kids or, and it's like, well, that's one way you can impact your community is send it to your school library, send it to your, local private school library, send it to your church, send it to your pediatricians, or take the issue when your child's done with it and put it in the office so others can see it.
Also, too, there are a lot of different communities. The community I used to live in, obviously, when you live on a farm, doesn't really happen out here. But in my neighborhood community where I used to live, they started putting in these little boxes so people could share. It was like a neighborhood library and people could share their books. I just saw one when I was in Utah. The neighborhood we were walking through had one. So put them in there.
Yeah.
Buy them, put them in there. So
it's okay. This was our 4th of July issue too. So
hold on, let me get back out here. Okay, show it again.
Yeah. The graphics are great. They really do a good job.
They really do. I mean, it's so cool, Eric.
They have a camping workout. So this one has a camping workout, where you're gearing it towards time of year. Fireworks in a jar was one of the activities. So again, if you're homeschooling or if you're just looking for an activity on the weekend where you want to connect personally with your kid, there's always something in there that you would have access to every month that you can do. So
well, let me go back because a couple of these were kind of funny. This one wasn't. My opinion, we medicate our children to deal with the trauma they're put through in public school, making zombies, not future thinkers. And then Robert says, oh, dang, Project Mockingbird, really educating kids on their government.
Yeah, they may not remember it or delve too deep, but it's also about parents. It's a family. It's more like you could even think of it as a family magazine. So I do read through it with my daughter every month. We go through all of it and it's great.
Yeah, and Earl's daughter says, oddly enough, JFK said he wanted to turn them into 1,000 pieces, and G.W. Bush called them 1,000 points of light. That's pretty horrifying. I didn't even put that together. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's very fascinating.
So I want people to kind of hear what your background is too, because I want them to know that these are educators create.
Yeah.
Your background again too.
So I was a faculty member at the University of Oklahoma in a tenure track position. I was the crazy one that left one of those. But I was in the College of Ed for 2 years there. It was almost 3 years that I finished there. And then I took the head of school position at a private school in Oklahoma for the last decade. Have been in education almost my entire life, whether it was receiving an education or being an educator. So certainly have a lot of experience. And I think I've lived through probably some of the most peculiar educational times in maybe the history of the United States, when you really think about it. Just dealing with the COVID scenario, which was somewhat unheard of in education, dealing with the shift in how the educational system functions at a very high level, and then understanding how the system operates. And so I would say the unique part is being in there and knowing the gaps that exist that our kids aren't getting has been very helpful. So I've written a lot about education, peer teaching, looking at accrediting agencies and their impact, looking at the history of higher education. I do have an athletics background, so that was actually what brought me to Oklahoma. They have an intercollegiate athletic administration graduate program. So I was involved in that, which I could do a whole episode on NIL money in college athletics and, the uniqueness there. But I've somewhat seen all those facets. And I'll share personally, I've always struggled on the sports side. I was a college athlete and I always felt like I was treated like a king being a college athlete, because you get massages, you have workout activities, you get first choice of classes. There's all these perks that are incredible from the educational side. What I always paid attention to as the head of school is the importance of art and music also to the physical development. And what you'll see a lot of times, and it's true, that athletics does drive culture a lot, and that it happens in schools. It's the front porch of the institutions. Yeah. But what concerns me is a lot of the students aren't athletes. And that's not being mean, that's not being rude, but maybe 5% of your population of high school kids are on the actual sports fields playing. And then of those 5%, 1% maybe play at the university level. And of those 1%, maybe 1% make it at a professional level. It's small. It's such a small subset. So in our leadership roles as educators, I was very conscientious about really trying to promote art and music, knowing that the sports thing will always be supported. And Oklahoma is definitely good at that. Like, they love, their Friday night football, and that's great. But I never had to worry about that being funded. I always said, okay, what can we do for these students to keep them engaged in the arts, engaged in the music, and then encouraging and fostering that through our athletes that were on campus, to encourage them to go watch their peer students who have incredible talents that they couldn't imagine being able to do, whether it's playing the violin or doing other activities. And so, I think all of that combined was very helpful in understanding what our kids do need today and what their background knowledge should be to make them successful as they navigate out into the world. So, and then our teammates are really good. Some great editors. We're really OCD. We try not to have any at all grammar mistakes. And, you know, people may not think grammar is that important, but it is vitally important in development.
Well, I don't know how, because we don't teach it in school. And if I hear I could have went one more time on some kind of, I mean, on the news, they can't even conjugate a verb anymore.
I know. And you know, again, I'll connect it back to the historical documents. What does it mean to capitalize a letter? That important? Well, if you can tie that into their information and knowledge and their understanding of the larger culture of which they're operating in, it has way more impact than you can imagine. And unfortunately, a lot of our teachers aren't educated on that necessarily. They may be just looking at the skill itself, and they might know the rule. But, you know, the hard part of the English language is the rule doesn't always apply, right?
Well, but that's why you have grammar, and that's why you have spelling. And I just look at so many of the things that they've taken out of public education, and then people go, they say we're 50th. And I'm like, well, if you can't teach a kid grammar, they can't understand sentence structure.
Sure.
And if they can't understand sentence structure, then they can't pick out the important part in the paragraph. I mean, it all goes together hand in glove. And the problem is we have educators who don't want children to be educated, and they're at the top, and all of that garbage trickles down so that you go to school. I remember when I was so I had a master's in biology, and I wanted to teach biology, but they had just changed the law, and you had to get, I believe it was 12 hours from a university to be able to teach. And the 12 hours encompass things like grading, basic classroom management, and something else. And I took these classes, and I was like, and this was back in the day. Okay. This was 2004, probably. No, before that. No, before the 2000s. And instead of in my grading class, and I took it at UCO, and instead of getting actual grading, I got some of that, but I also got a huge section of my class devoted to misogyny. Wow. And how it didn't really matter. The class was a lot of girls, but it wasn't going to really matter what she taught you, because most of the principals were men, and they were just going to not pay any attention to anything you said anyway. And here's all the data that shows this. And I would go home and just rant to my husband. And he was like, what are you taking this for? And I was like, because they're making me. And it goes back to what you said, Eric, about the accreditation is even worse. We had a lovely lady on who she started at a childcare center in Yukon, and now she's adding actual grades to it.
Sure.
She said, I'm not going to get accredited by the state, because if I get it accredited by the state, they're going to tell me exactly how I have to do this and exactly how I have to do that. And I don't want to. I'm going to do it the way I want.
Yeah, it's super difficult. And a lot of people don't understand how it impacts everybody, because you are required to take those courses. And most of the time what you'll find is, unfortunately, they're too worried about educating teachers on social issues and it's really divisiveness at the end of it, because it gets us to argue with each other at the expense of our kids not getting what they need, where you could teach them skills. And that was always the conversation of higher ed. More at a larger level, investment is very different than, let's say, an engineering degree, because you know you have an economy that functions, and you have starting pays that are different. But the idea, if you're going to be an algebra 2 teacher, honestly, Michael, we could learn that in 6 months and be able to do the whole content for the year. Why are you spending 4 years paying? I mean, really, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're going to live on campus and do that, and then entering into the workforce and having student debt burden that's unforgivable in bankruptcy court, that's unforgivable if you have a natural disaster on your home. I mean, it's really sad when you think about that. And even if you try to talk to colleagues that are in higher ed, I don't think that it registers very well with them of, hey, you understand we could actually be setting them up for a worse outcome. And the problem with that is then the trust in the institutions erode. And I think you're starting to see that, right? Because individuals don't have gainful employment that are leaving university. They're going home now, their family mortgaged the farm, and they don't have anything to show for it, except for they know how to argue with you about misogyny, which, does what, right? So it's a hard balance. And it's not that I'm not a fan of the liberal arts education or the importance of having an expansive knowledge base. It's just, what does that mean in an economy and in our educational system and how we prepare teachers to educate students? What is vital that they need to know? Yeah, knowing different teaching methodologies, for sure. That probably would be advantageous to all of them. But is it a requirement? I mean, if you're a great storyteller, you and I both know, you can engage anybody. And I've watched that happen without a college. There are people without college educations that can do that. So it's hard because we've been so programmed to think you have to do these things in order to be this status in our society. And if you're going to break those barriers down, you do have to be careful, because you don't want to destabilize it without a better idea to replace it, because then you have a whole system collapse and then you have somewhat that anarchy. So it's a difficult thing. And that's why piece by piece, right, you can do that through educating the population.
Well, for those of you who weren't on yesterday, Andrew was talking about the what's next. Yeah. And about the fact that they're taking university structure and they're turning it into like homeschool. They're using the homeschool model for a university setting, and to get kids through university without having to spend that stupid, unreasonable money for stupid, unreasonable crap that doesn't help kids after they're done. Yeah. So,
the problem with that is you then have kids that are lost with little meaning in life or little purpose, and they don't know where to turn. And now they've assumed all this debt. And just from a psychological standpoint, that's a tremendous barrier, right? Yeah. Like, what do? So then people will say, well, the kids aren't getting married, or kids aren't, purchasing homes. And yeah, like, you also are telling them to be responsible. Well, what the responsible thing to do would be maybe not bring children into the world. That's their mindset, where we really need to go the other way, right? And help support them and foster that. And there are certainly ways to do it. It's just, it seems that the powers to be aren't interested in it at this time. So we'll have to try to influence that shift positively.
Well, we're at about an hour, and I know we wanted to talk a little bit about gold and silver, and I know Michael would like to talk with you about that too. But I want to get in one last comment, because I just think that this is so true. These would be great as travel magazines as well, and a perfect alternative to tablet time. So when you're in the grocery store, I mean, you show the magazine how heavy and durable it is. When you're in the grocery store, you don't need a tablet. This is not a weekly reader newsprint kind of a thing. This is it looks like almost cardstock on the outside. I mean, some real light cardstock. I mean, this is a heavy duty magazine. Get it, take it to the grocery store, put it in the basket with your kid. And then as you're going through, talk a little bit about the magazine while you're doing like what Michael said. Michael, what do you say about going to the grocery?
Put the phone up, period. We're going to pay attention. We're going to look at prices. We're going to look at like value per ounce, all those things.
Oh, Michael, I'm like connected. So literally, to her point, my family, we've been in our conversion van this summer going all over the United States and sharing the magazine. But when we're in the vehicle with the kid, they have these and they can go through them. And you'd be surprised by the questions they start asking just in going through the pages, which create great conversation with them. And certainly I'm not exempt from having a phone and the fact that, people are communicating with me all the time. It's very important that we put them down.
Go
ahead.
Well, and just another comment I was going to make earlier on that whole process of having your magazine. I just like the fact that also, okay, so the kids are in school, they're on their screens and with technology all day. A lot of these kids, when they get out of school, now they go right back to a computer or a TV screen or a game console for the next 5 or 6, 7, 8 hours until they go to bed. So I like the fact of also just having an alternative that's actually not just educational, but it's actually something that's physical, that may be somewhat engaging to get them off of that technology, at least for 20 minutes or an hour or something on top of it.
And certainly before bedtime. I mean, we know that clinically too, right? The screen time before bedtime, it's not positive for the kid.
So, even for adults.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We're definitely not exempt from them. That's kind of the thing. And they're addictive devices.
Have a conversation with your children. What a novel idea. And we laugh, but it is true. I even see people Julie and I were out having dinner recently, and there was a precious little family sitting over to the side, and they didn't have any phones, but then suddenly mom pulls out the phone, and then she's doing this, and you're like,
yeah, put it away. Actually, when I was at the school, we would take students on trips, which was important, right? You need to go and experience things, even if it's going to Marlin Mansion in Oklahoma. Well, the rule was, one, you didn't have phones. I mean, I was very clear at the school, like there's no phones during the school day, and parents love that. And it's like, wow, what a novel idea, right? You're actually here to learn, and you can talk to your friends, and it's really weird. But we'd just stack them in the middle of the table. And so
you didn't have to have state money to figure out what to do with the phone?
No, it's very enlightening to just think independently of, like, maybe you could set a rule of there's no phones while we're having dinner together. And, one of the things that drives a lot of that is the parents' fear, because you have their child in your care, right? And they want to be able to communicate with them. And I understand that. So having the phone there for an emergency scenario, they need to call you in an emergency. We always had a policy. If a kid wanted to call their parent during the school day, we would never deny that. If they wanted to call and sit in the office for an hour and just talk to them, I'm like, that's their prerogative, right? I'm not going to get involved in that. But the idea that they were going to be on them texting and communicating all the time while doing these activities as a group. And it's funny because even today I get text messages from families of some of the students who are now seniors that will still meet. They maybe went off to different schools, and they still meet, and they still stack their phones when they have dinner together. And it's awesome because then you've had an impact, and they really are engaging with each other.
Well, and I think that the other thing that you really hit there is establishing a pattern.
Yeah.
Helps.
Routine.
We're establishing all the wrong patterns in public school, and we need to establish different patterns in our homes that are going to be healthy for home life, not just bringing home what came from school. And that's, I think, the problems. And Earl's daughter's right. I think that needs to be a campaign, family over electronics, put it away and stay engaged. And I do wonder, I've seen some of the Gen X, and I have younger Gen X kids myself, and I'm their thoughts and their ideas about things in a different way than what they've been told. And I just hope that, if we can get the younger kids started on this, and we can get this really developed, I don't know why you couldn't do a high school version of this.
100%. And I think it will grow over time. And that's been the conversation. And when you're dreaming and thinking about how do you truly impact the educational sector, I mean, I would love to have a red, white, and blue book fair that could be offered to schools, where we go through and we pick authors and books that we know are expansive of genres and interest. And, you have science fiction and all those things, but that also families know they can have that content and not have to worry about what their kid's reading. And that was the purpose too of Red, White, and Blue. It's like you shouldn't, as a parent, have to be going through all of this information day in and day out, worried about what your child's being exposed to at certain developmental stages.
Well, it's interesting because many, many years ago, I want to say over a decade now, when my second oldest was in middle school, she was in we had her in a charter school, and she was doing I forget what it's they go to different schools, and it's I'm not thinking of it, but at any rate, we were at a different school. She was participating in this brain game or whatever it was. And I was looking at some of the books that were in this library, which is where we were meeting. And I was going, this looks gross. I mean, this doesn't look any good at all. And this was in 2014, 15, 16, somewhere around in there. And I started doing a deep dive into the books, and I would publish that. I republished it even several times about how yucky the books were all the way back then. And parents just didn't have time to go through them. I think a lot of the librarians came from the woke genre, and they were just kind of stuffing them in because there's a thought that if it's new, it's better. There's a thought that if it earns some kind of medallion, like Reader's Medallion or the Sequoia whatever award, well, that's going to be this great, of mice and men type book. And it's not. All of these things are degraded. All of these things are woke now. You just simply cannot believe that something on a book list is good, or that something that's won a book award is good. And I'm with you, Eric, and I want to reiterate that banning books doesn't work. It doesn't. We'll go back to Fahrenheit 451. That's not where we want to be. But developmentally improper books should not be in libraries. They should not. And especially on the public dime. In every library, the neighborhood library is on the public dime. The school library is on the public dime. I don't want you introducing things to a child that child has no business knowing yet. Let them do it in high school. Let them do it after high school. But we've got to stop the developmentally inappropriate crap.
Well, that's coming though, Jenny. That's coming from you, who's has a Christian moral value system. There's a lot of people that are giving these directions. They're not like us. It's hard for us to comprehend how they think, and it's okay for them. It's that's the difficulty. You're fighting back against years of informational control that have influenced identities of people who are strongly passionate about those topics because their identity is rooted in it, right? And that's how you do it. That's the psychology of it. If people don't think that it's brilliant, I think they're a little ignorant that they knew exactly what they were doing in these movements, and they knew how to destabilize our culture and to deconstruct the family unit. And that would be a lot of right. The cover is 9/11, right? Your Twin Towers. A lot of people have made that analogy that was the nuclear family unit, right? The mother and the father, and you collapse that. Well, look at the degrading of the social fabric since those years, and the changes that we've seen in our culture. We have to, as parents, as educators, as leaders, we have to turn back. And again, doesn't mean that you ban all those books, but the problem is you won't see this in those public libraries. They're not going to purchase thousands of copies of these for public libraries across the country, right? And I was in a local one the other day, and I was somewhat shocked at the book selection that was on display. I really couldn't believe it. And I told my wife, I said, look at it. Look at what's on display, and then try to find anything that's rooted in love and light and kindness and civility and humanity on display in any of these other books. And they just weren't out. They weren't out.
But Eric,
in in your opinion, with your experience at higher ed and moving into the private and everything else, I mean, it's not out of the realm in any capacity to say that it's on purpose. I mean, do you think this is all on purpose? It didn't just slip in accidentally and then, oh, we're kind of realizing it. I mean, do you think it's actually been injected on purpose?
100%. I mean, and it was all done. That's why the money always matters. It was all done through the funding mechanisms. And it wasn't a overnight, we're going to do this. This is an incremental process of how do you stretch the tentacles into these educational sectors to cause this shift in the culture incrementally over time that can get the outcome that we want, which is the destabilization of the family units, the lack of trust within the family units, unfortunate, I don't want to use a term that might offend some people, but the poisoning of our children, not through many facets, right? I mean, you can go down, Secretary Kennedy was just had his own debate yesterday about that, right? It's like, there are so many pieces to that need to be deconstructed that it's hard for individuals to wrap their head around how complex it was. And I saw it firsthand, even when I was at the university setting, right? I mean, when you put statements in university handbooks that are the educational policy and evaluation departments that are in violation of literally state law and federal law because you have a social movement that you want to promote, it's very dangerous. And a lot of my colleagues would never agree with that because they think they're fighting the good fight. But it's all fine unless you're not the one dictating what the outcomes should be, right?
I do want to, since you mentioned, hang on a second, Jenny, since you mentioned RFK and what all he said, I do want to just back up one thing that he said. Sure. So he was talking about how during COVID, teachers unions were allowed to write the orders to close the schools down.
Yep.
And already, when I was typing that in on the internet, there's a million fact checkers, already slamming that. I'll tell you, Eric, I spoke to our superintendent, Angela Grunwald, when all that happened. I mean, I was hammering them constantly. I was always going up there. Yep. I spoke to her in person. We were in her office. So this is after all the COVID stuff happened, we got back in school full time. I was in her office, and I kid you not, I have this recorded because I recorded all of our conversations. I have it recorded. She told me in person, right to my face, that she didn't have a choice. She had to shut the schools down because all the teachers were going to walk out if they did not shut Edmond Public Schools down. She told me that in person, right to my face.
Yeah, unbelievable. And again, who is dictating that these decisions be made? You follow the money, always.
You were going to say, you said something about, these books, whereas about love and, that kind of thing. Love is now it means a different thing.
Well, that's right.
I mean, let's not forget how it is so newspeak. I mean, sure. It's so 1984. We have taken these terms and turned them into whatever it is that matches the Marxist thought process. It's horrifying.
Yeah, I call it verbicide.
That again.
Verbicide. Yeah.
We need that on a t-shirt. Hang on.
I have a lot of t-shirts if you want those quotes.
You and Michael need to get together. Okay, let me go to some comments because there were some good ones there. Stop triggering the fleshy and triggering the spirit. Katie has done more research into education and the transing of education and the money going into this nonsense and all of that than anybody in the state of Oklahoma. And she has made the point on our podcast, I don't know, Michael, how many times? Like 50 times, that the whole idea behind so much of this Marxist nonsense is to say, oh, we're giving so-and-so an award. Here's an award. This person is an award-winning, blah, blah. But you don't, because that provides a legitimacy. Oh, well, hey, they won an award. Nobody ever stops to think about what the award was for or what they're actually doing in the class. But by God, they won an award. And I love that she makes that point here, that an award just as a legitimacy, it's like a protectionist thing.
Sure.
And Julia said everything on display anymore is decreation. And this is a great one from my friend Shelley. She said there were problems in the systems all the way back to when we were kids as well. Education should never have been placed under the government, ever. They incrementally degraded family, as I was guilty. Look at the history of the church since Christ's death. The deconstruction of the truth of his word through unsound doctrines that don't align as we study it in truth. We must invite him in. I think that's so true. Julia says, without computers came all the pornography. That's the other problem that we haven't even talked about here,
100%.
which warps and degrades the mind. They targeted men first and weakened the families. We flushed the wholesome and cleaned down the toilet since theory of evolution was taught in school. Finally, a doctor talking education who has his head screwed on straight. Why aren't you running for lieutenant governor? And she said,
my response is family.
The reason why she said that is there is, and she says Forbes for Oklahoma.com. She was just on last week, and we were talking about the fact that one of the candidates, it's the only one for Democrat, is an openly gay drag queen who is running for lieutenant governor.
Wow.
So I think she was just making the point that we have a PhD here who actually has his head screwed on. Unless you're doing drag on the weekends, Eric.
I'm happily married with 2 awesome children, and that debate has happened many of times between my wife and I about running for office, and you know, she's not too keen on the idea, only because she doesn't filter as well as I do in the narrative, and so it's not just you running, it's your entire family unit that's running, and that's important to us, that our kids have a great upbringing and aren't exposed to that. Maybe once they're a little older, their old man can go into salvage it in some capacity.
Well, in all honesty, I mean, between you and Andrew Pudwa, I mean, if we could either get either one of you to run for state superintendent, I really believe, you know, I get what Ryan's been doing about challenging the educational left, which is the majority of education today, is the educational left. We've just trained them all like that.
Yeah.
And I do get that he's been really good at pushing back on that. And I see that, but we've got to have somebody who's going to pay attention to the fact that our kids don't know grammar.
Yeah.
They don't know how to conjugate a verb in a sentence. They don't know how to write cursive or read cursive writing. So how are you going to read the original documents that talk about how that explain your liberty to you from the federal government? I mean, it's a tragedy that I do believe many people are waking up to since COVID. I do believe, thank God, the Marxists pushed it too far with that. And people went, well, what are you doing to my children? So I think that was a good thing. But I think there's been a lot of, re-snoring, if you will. A lot of people have gone back to night going, well, at least it's back the way it is. And I can still go get my nails done at lunch while the kids are at school.
Yeah.
Well, and just a small extension on that, Jenny, not only have all those things kind of been progressively removed from our kids' education, but now, going out a little bit farther, they're being completely replaced, with technology and AI. You don't have to even know how to spell or use grammar properly, because AI can do it all for you. And so that's gonna make it even, faster, that curve going down even faster, because now, they're just going to take advantage of not just laziness, but kids' ingenuity to go ahead and use all those things to get by.
And that's actually the scarier part too, as some of my research, even on the debt clock, has exposed. When you allow AI to dictate the outcomes, the controller of AI, the programmer of AI, also skews the artificial intelligence. And the problem with that is, as you go to archives, as you decode documents, they can manipulate them.
Yeah.
And if you trust that inherently and don't go look for yourself, or don't go think and find those documents, I mean, I just have countless examples of being on the National Archives website and pulling a document and looking at the transcription, but then going to the original document in the Library of Congress, and the transcription's wrong because the grammar's wrong. And the grammar right? We could argue over a comma for, I mean, entire legal cases.
Fair enough.
Right? So these things are so vital. And unfortunately, I get it. Like, in a way, you got to be a weirdo to be reading that at night and that be your passion. But that's who I am. And my wife would make fun of me because most are like, oh, they're watching a Netflix series or they're doing that. It's like, great. If I've spent most of my time in the evenings reading these things, and it's fascinating how many discrepancies you see. So if the students don't know that, if they don't understand grammar and what its utility is in our existence, like it's vital in contract law, it's vital in legal documents, it's vital in communication, in verbicide, right? Not allowing people to change words. These things have played out time and time again. And we lived it in COVID. They changed the word vaccine, right? They changed the definition.
Yeah.
So that's one. They've changed the definition of money. They've changed the definition of all of these terms. And, you know, I think maybe it was like Tim McGraw or somebody that sang the song Back When a Spoon Was a Spoon.
Yes.
Yeah. So that
song,
it's a great way to actually teach kids. You could play that song and just be like, listen, see how the words evolve over time. The only way that occurs is by individuals agreeing to it. And that's part of the
no, point. But no, hold on. Not just individuals agreeing to it. It's literally indoctrinating people and kids at school into learning a different meaning. Yeah. I think that's what's so scary about it, that people don't understand why that's scary. If you can literally say, well, this word doesn't mean that, and I'm going to teach all these kids in my power that this word, that love, has a completely different meaning now than it did, you know. I mean, that's what's scary to me about this whole Marxist ideology of ruining the culture, is they're doing it through words that they're teaching to the kids. So the kids don't even know any difference. You say, well, that's not really the definition. They go, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you try to show them. That's why I have a dictionary from the 1860s that I keep, because I always like to go back. It's like, read your current dictionary, go back to 1860s. What was the term? What was the definition of the word?
How thick is your dictionary?
It is. It's pretty big. I have it right here.
Mine is this thick. I'm putting it where people can see.
It's not the biggest, but this is one. It's from 1828.
Let's see this. Yeah, that's about mine. I have one about that same size. So
when
put up a new dictionary that's this big.
Yeah. Well, you just Google it, I guess. I don't know. You're supposed to put it in the chat.
Jenny, the print's just smaller. That's it. Just the print's smaller.
Right. So I just read an article the other day, and I can't remember where it was. I wish sometimes I didn't read so many things, because then I could remember the various things I read. But it was an article. A guy had done a study. A group of individuals had done a study on the number of words that have been removed from Webster's dictionary. And basically what they do is they make this decision. And this is the crazy part. Listen to this. So they make this decision based on internet searches. So the least number of times that the words come up in internet searches, once they get down to a certain percentage of non-use, they just throw them out.
Wow.
Terrible. Yeah, we need the words.
So how many times have you written a word in something, Eric, and then people are like, what does that mean? You can't use that word like that.
Well, it's one of the things I love teaching kids. Is the beauty of the English language is that you could create neologisms too. And so
What?
a neologism,
New things.
yeah, a new word. So
Yeah.
like I've made words my whole life. I wrote, athletication I was a word that I came up with, right? An athlete's education in higher ed is very
That's pretty
different.
good, actually.
So, these terms, the terms have meaning, and students need to understand how to be able to decode it. Students need to understand the rules of the grammar and all those pieces. But yeah, you put words in there that people have no idea. And that's why, again, Greek, Roman, ancient languages, it's essential for our kids to be exposed to that too, because the derivation of the terminology. And
Absolutely.
it's a lot easier to maintain that over time if you have that backdrop and that historical knowledge.
You used to have to do basic Latin before you went to medical school, and I don't think you have to do it anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of places have removed it.
Yep. Okay, let's look at some comments really quick.
Katie's
Anyone
got a
who
new word for
embrace what?
No, you'll get to it. You'll get to it.
Anyone who doesn't embrace the crazy train will have to go through what Walters is going through. The educrats have lost their ever-loving mind. That's very true. Filters are a huge problem for many of us whom are females. One of the reasons I respect rope is the balance of female-male perspectives. Yay, that's good. If people don't keep standing up, the next part of the agenda will be worse and harder to stand against. And Katie was talking about what you were saying about the grammar changing the meaning of something. So she's seen that happen. The powers that be have perverted and hijacked Christ's model of the gospel. They preach the LGBTQ doctrine to all the nations. I just read Snakes of the Ganges. This evil is global. Well, I don't know the book, but that's true. Depends on what the definition of is.
You have some good commenters.
I love the way you stick the history back in there, Jules. That's my girl. Earl says my dictionary.
Another t-shirt.
I love our audience so much. We have the best audience on this show. Mine's not that old, but it's from the 1940s. Good for you, Gracie. I'm glad you have an older one. We are the controller of AI. It is imperative to double check any information it provides, catch it. AI was also a city in the Bible. Ooh, interesting. We see this city early on with Abraham. The Hebrew meaning is marked for destruction. That city was destroyed later in Joshua. It'll bring about our destruction as well. The good news is that our Savior returned. Manipulanthropist.
That's a pretty good one. We got some modern Shakespeare's here.
I love
Dr. Snyder's leading the way with the expanding of vocabulary through literature.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Katie, that's awesome. Manipulanthropist.
Even in thinking about the Secretary of Education piece, one thing I've found in a leadership role that you have to navigate, whether teachers are predominantly Democrat, left, right, and indifferent. I've always found that if I concede some conversation to the individual where they tell me something that's valuable, and then maybe present some of the information back to them for them to consider. One, the relationship continues, and that matters. If we're trying to shift this for the whole state, you just have to have somebody that is willing to listen to others, be heard. That doesn't mean that their policies have to impact it. A lot of times people just want to be heard. I have plenty of people that would argue with me about a policy at a school, but after hearing them, me giving my side as to why, it almost always worked itself out. And at least then it was rooted in respect. And that's an important character development that our kids also need, so that it doesn't become so alienated. So I would always tell, if we focus on what unites us, which is always kids are what can unite us, then it's easy to navigate the political spectrum and do what's right and then get people behind you. So,
well, Shelley says, Thank you for that. Thank you on listening. And I really tend to agree with you too. And that I think that's what we don't do now at all.
Yeah.
If you have a different, and I've been actually, I've been practicing this. There's a girl on Substack who is not on, I mean, she's a Democrat. And she wrote a really great article about an issue that we've had, which was Representative Ty Burns, who was found guilty of a misdemeanor for trying to gouge his wife's eyes out. So it was a really just a protectionist cabal that surrounded somebody who was a representative. So the men came around, the military came around, the other representatives came around, and it became more about who he was in a role than what he had actually done as a person. And we're having this huge problem with this right now. I think it's always been a problem, but it's really becoming a problem. And she'd written an article about that, and in a lot of ways, the left can see what the right is doing and is willing to call them out on doing the wrong things when the right isn't willing to do it.
Yeah.
Like if you say anything derogatory about Trump's policies, will jump on you. You're an anti-Trumper. You don't like Trump.
Sure.
It's this bizarre cult of Trump that we have. So it's all about Trump and it's not about his policies. So this woman wrote this article and I said, hey, this is really good. One thing. And I've been kind of going back and forth with some of her posts, doing the same thing. Hey, I hear you. This is great. But you know what? Did you think about this? And she's been really great at responding and going, you know what? I didn't really think about that, but you're right. And I think if we'll stop doing and actually listen, I think we are not going to agree on everything, and
100%.
we should never change our core principles to agree with somebody. That should never happen.
Yeah.
But in the places where you can overlap, then we should be.
Yeah. It's huge. That's why you had a lot of movements. Even there's always educational movements. They come up with a new one all the time. It could be Teach for America. It could be Back to Basics. It can be, you name it. All that's fine. There is not a one solution fits all that's going to solve it. And it's certainly not going to do so in a country as diverse as the United States that is expansive territories, expansive region, expansive states, which is why, decentralization is actually advantageous because it then allows you to serve the local populations and the state populations at a much better level than top-down management. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but it seems very important that individuals start to pay attention to it at the state level. And with Red, White, and Blue, I know Rachel was at an event and there were some protesters at an event, not because the magazine was there by any means, but they were there because they were concerned about whatever was going on. And she ended up having a lengthy conversation with individuals that would be on the polar opposites politically, who had a view of what this magazine meant and then had a completely opposite view by the end, and ended up like subscribing to the magazine for their kids. So it's always about just trying to keep that open, and we're very reactive of shutting the door, and that's hard to then navigate, because my opinion, the powers to be like that they want us divided, because the idea that we would unite for common things would be extremely scary.
Well, yeah, because we'd go after them on so many things.
Correct.
Earl's daughter says, seriously considering a Red, White, and Blue magazine kids club. I'm going to see what my homeschool group thinks. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so glad we talked so much about this magazine, because I do really, after you and I talked about it and I looked at the website and I was like, we've got to get out the information on this magazine.
And I've been up at the Capitol. I handed out some magazines to senators up there and House of Representatives. I've been to the Department of Ed. I gave to some of the individuals that I know up there. So they're aware that it's out there. It's just hard to get all 77 counties in Oklahoma, get there, find the right people. PTO presidents are probably an awesome resource, if people know PTO presidents and sharing it with them. But word of mouth is going to be how it spreads. So we're just trying to continue to share it, and it'll continue to grow. It's been exciting.
Well, it needs to be something that I don't know. Hold on a second. Representative Gabe Woolley says he would love to connect with you, Eric. Please reach out to me or my office. Hey, Gabe, can I just shoot you his number?
Yeah, you can.
I'll just text you his number after we're done. Yay. There you go. All right. Well, do we have enough time to just briefly talk about what you wanted to talk about with the gold and silver since we're already at 1:34?
Yeah, we're at 1:30. I mean, what can I share? I don't know if you have any of those screenshots. We talked a little bit last time. For individuals that aren't aware, the USDebtClock.org, which tracks the United States national debt, which is at 37 trillion right now, but that doesn't include the unfunded liabilities and all the other expenses that are off the books. They have been putting out secret windows since October of 2023. And the narrative of which they're communicating to the people. So this actually just came out the other day, September 1st, the new money revolution. So I think Michael has talked a little bit about gold and silver, but the historical context is understanding constitutionally what is legal tender, where our money is derived from, why our money has been our money. And there's a distinction between what is money and what is currency, and how that functions today. And wow, it's like an entire, class on educating individuals about it. But the newest secret window that's up actually has a 44-page book that gives you a historical narrative. If you click that free book, it'll open up. And it's a very, very interesting history that connects tremendously to financial literacy and financial education, which, if we're talking about education, probably one of the most underrepresented topics that we have. We always have financial literacy standards, but they never teach you the true history of our financial system. And so a quick overview would be, we've had 3 central banks in U.S. history. The first was the first bank of the United States. Thomas Jefferson took care of that one, didn't renew the charter. If you read the case law on it, it's very fascinating. You had your second formation of the central bank, which was Andrew Jackson. We know that he certainly doesn't have a positive connotation connected to him historically, but he did rid the vipers and the snakes from the political offices and that second central bank. And then you have to move forward to essentially 1913 and the formation of the Federal Reserve, which many have to be seeing that playing out in real time today, with our current president, Mr. Trump, or Donald Trump, attacking wholeheartedly the Fed every chance that he can get, whether it's about lowering interest rates through Jerome Powell or finding nuanced behaviors by Fed chairs that can allow for their removal. So Lisa Cook seems to be on her way out, which allows the president to place another individual on that committee. And probably the biggest point there is that the Federal Reserve is not federal, nor does it have any reserves. And so the currency of which you are exchanging has zero meaning other than, I don't know, it's kind of like the movie Dumb and Dumber. It's a suitcase of IOUs. So
as long as we all agree, as long as we all just keep agreeing that's what we're going to do.
Keep agreeing. And as long as you agree that you owe me, that's fine. We're good with it. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's interest charged on the creation of money, which is your M2 money supply. If you go to the Fed website, you can look up the M2 money supply, which is basically the unlimited license to create debt, is probably a good way to put it. And some would say print money, but the truth is there's so much money or currency in circulation at this point, you couldn't even print that many trillions of dollars if you wanted to try. So it's a very fascinating exploration into that history. And the theory is a financial reset is occurring before our eyes that has taken many years. And if you study monetary history, that often occurs as nation states remove their gold and silver from their coinage. So you could extrapolate that to Roman times. And again, there's so many details to it. But what I hope your viewers understand is the original United States of America, which is still functioning, was a confederacy which was modeled after the Greek city-states. The republic, which then formed from the U.S. Constitution, was modeled after the Roman Legion and their empire. The Roman Empire removed their silver content from their coinage over time, and as they did that, basically their power at a global level continued to decrease until the empire fell apart. In the United States, the last time silver was in our coinage was 1968, which was 40% Eisenhower coins and 40% Kennedy half dollars. From that point forward, we don't have any silver in our coinage, which means it's, gilded copper alloys that aren't worth very much given their metal content. And when you start controlling for things from a monetary side that refer back to when you had silver, when you start calculating data like inflation, like purchasing power, like the numbers are so horrible that and our purchasing power as a nation literally has depleted 99% since 1913 because the federal charter allows them to have a 2% a year inflation target, which basically debases your currency by 2% a year, compounded year over year since 1913. And it's pretty sickening. So once you understand that, then you can somewhat escape that system. And ironically, if you want to connect it biblically, Haggai 2:8, the gold and silver is mine, saith the Lord. These issues aren't just by chance. And we could say the battle of good versus evil has occurred through many empires throughout history. Once that gold and silver is removed from their currency or from their monetary system, you can see a destabilization of the culture and a destabilization of the community that occurs over time. And we're living proof of that. So,
well, and I think it's important, Eric, I want you to hit just one more time, because there are so many people on here. And to me, this is just so mind-blowing, because I don't think people realize, but just recap real quick, that constitutional money, gold and silver,
yep.
That's it's a unit of measure. It's not just some made up out of, just recap that real quick.
Yeah. So one, I have so much to share on this, but Article 1, Section 10 states very clearly the only legal tender is gold and silver for payment of debts, right? You can go read that in the Constitution. So the Constitution is created at the Constitutional Convention. Thomas Jefferson isn't there. I may have a personal favorite, but he's over in Europe. He comes back. 1792, they create the first Coinage Act. So the United States Mint opens up. If you read the Coinage Act, it's very clear, our terminology, and this is why I say verbicide. A dollar in the original 1792 Coinage Act was a unit of measure, and a dollar was silver. It was 371 and a quarter grains of silver within a dollar. They took all the Spanish mill dollars of the time. They melted them down, all the currency of the world. They melted those down because they were being used in commerce and trade in the United States through merchants. And then they basically came up with, okay, what is the silver content? What's the average weight? How many grains of silver would be used? And we established our unit of measure. Dollar is pegged, just like a foot is a foot, just like a yard is a yard, just like a pint is a pint. It's a unit of measure. So from there, they then created a ratio, and an eagle could only be gold. So a gold eagle was 1/15 of a silver dollar, which meant it was 23.7 grains. And then a copper penny, which ironically, we just removed pennies from circulation, but it was copper by law, and it was the word's capitalized, so it's penny, it's a unit, was 1/100th of the silver content. So that's how you established your currency and what was actually money, because it was fungible and tangible and all the aspects of what means money. And that was in place until the crime of 1873. So our United States Mint was coining those products. At one point, we shifted the ratio because you could adjust it. So it was really, a lot of people say, go to the gold standard, but we weren't on a gold standard. We were on a tri-metallic standard. You had copper, silver, gold. As that evolved out and through, they did adjust the ratio at one time because the European powers were doing an arbitrage bet. And basically, they adjusted their ratio, which allowed you to sell gold into Europe at a lower price and swap for silver. And it was a strategy. So we had to adjust ours to basically get on par. But in 1873, there's a fantastic book. It's called Coins Financial School. If there's homeschool parents, you should certainly purchase it because it's fun to read. They removed the dollar as a unit of measure. And upon doing so, there was a lot of turmoil in the marketplaces, but the theory was the Eastern bankers basically were manipulating the market through Wall Street, through the stock exchange, and the Westerners and the farmers all held their currency in silver and money in silver. And so it really hurt them because you decoupled the unit of measure, and then you could say that your silver wasn't worth $1 because you then had it in a marketplace dictating the price. And that is a major piece that I would say 95% of the American public has zero clue about. And I would say even university scholars, business school representatives do not understand how our money evolved over time and the importance of that historical narrative to then be able to compare truly apples to apples, right? So here's an interesting fact. 1934 gold confiscation. FDR signs it, right? We take all the gold from the American public, essentially. It's by law, you're required to turn in your gold bullion. Most of the public actually does so. If you refuse to do so, the fine was $10,000. This is in 1930s, and up to 10 years in prison. If you extrapolate the dollar value for a gold coin in the 1930s to today, it would be equivalent, just the 10,000 would be equivalent to $235,000 fine. But if you control for the gold content, it would be $1 million fine today for not turning in your gold. And then what the actual government did when we all turned our gold in, all of our grandparents and individuals, they revalued gold overnight. So the president, through executive authority, made gold on our balance sheet from $20 to $35 overnight, which actually debased your American dollar, right? And so the purchasing power that everybody that was exchanged in paper money decreased. And they don't understand how that happens. Do you think I should make a class on this?
I actually do think you should.
Yeah.
You and Michael probably need to get together and tag team it.
We need to. So through the debt clock, you can learn a lot of these things. And they've put out the tally sticks that were in Europe prior to any form of currency. They used to take wooden sticks and they'd split them in half, but you would draw on them or put art on them or carvings prior. And then the banker or the individual that owed the money would keep one half of the stick and the other individual keep the other. And then they put them together once the debt was paid. So we've evolved from those systems over time. But gold and silver was the root of currency and money in the United States. So when people, are talking today, it's very hard for me to get upset at 26-year-olds who are living with their parents, because the truth is, if you were making $1.25, I think I gave this example before, but if you were making $1.25 in 1964 an hour minimum wage, and you adjusted and controlled that for silver content, that would be 5 silver quarters at 90%. If you went to purchase a silver quarter today, that's 90% silver without anything but the melt value of that coinage, each of them would cost $10, which means you would have a $50 an hour minimum wage purchasing power equivalent today in order to be competitive with our parents.
Yeah.
And that's how bad they've debased your currency. And so I understand. And unfortunately, our political leaders, I don't think, understand it. they'll say we'll give $5,000 to teachers for a raise, but then they're just printing that currency, which just causes more inflation, which then decreases their purchasing power, which is why you have to have a stable system.
Yeah. I wanted to just show that slide on the tally stick system, because it's so, I would advise everybody to go to the debt clock and download those, because the slides are real easy to read, but it's so fundamental to just understanding that evolution of how money's just been completely I can't even, it's been completely perverted. That's the right word. It's been completely perverted from the original intentions of the constitutional money. And it's just unbelievable that we allow that, because we allow all that to happen.
Yes. Because, well, one, our documents are a covenant with our creator. So we don't have to know man, woman, child. That's an important thing for our children to understand, where their rights are derived from and who we the people are. That those words weren't selected by chance. And so the critical part of that, and our founders knew. I mean, you have the Currency Acts of 1764. All of these slides, I mean, I could discuss all of them, but Benjamin Franklin's quote right there about the Revolutionary War, a lot of people don't realize it was actually about control of our monetary system. So our founders were brilliant. I always tell people, one, they swore to secrecy on November 9th, 1775. There's documentation of all that, meaning a lot of the stuff that was going on behind closed doors, I'm not convinced the American public is even aware of what documents exist and don't exist, right? There are treaties, there are documents that are critical to our nation's functioning. And when you're fighting enemies, foreign enemies constantly that are trying to intervene into our economies, into our systems, to invade and deconstruct this idea, this covenant, it's a problem. So you have to trust each other and set these things up. But those are just failed fiat currencies. A fiat currency is a currency that has no backing by any physical metals or any assets. And so historically, if you track fiat currency, the history of them, every fiat currency ever to form in existence has collapsed, meaning it ends up with a value of zero.
Well, and here's that silver destruction out of Rome, how they took it out of their coins.
Yes. So you have to think mirror. Look at the Roman era, look at the US DC era. Now, there's some distinctions here. Roman era, great. Remember, I'm saying the Greeks were critical. The Greek governance structure was critical. Thomas Jefferson was very, very adamant about that in his writings. The United States, and I made this distinction before, the United States is different than the United States of America. It doesn't say USA DC era. The United States Mint from the 1792 Coinage Act could be a different mint than the United States of America mint, because those are two different legal charters, and it's all about corporate law. And so the American public is not taught that in the educational sector, that the founding documents are legal contracts. I'm not convinced our legislative bodies know that. And so it's actually fascinating to even explore things like the Declaration of Independence or the US Constitution. And if your viewers haven't watched the musical 1776, a personal favorite of mine, there's a famous scene that Adams, Franklin, and Jefferson, it's called the Declaration of Independence and the Egg, and they're singing the song and they're determining the national bird for the United States. And that's a whole other narrative. But I find it fascinating that the Declaration of Independence, of which we see on our walls in our offices, up probably at the Capitol, that you see on display, one, it's lowercase united, capitalized States of America. But I'm telling you, if you go into Jefferson's archives and look at his drafts, the actual declaration draft that he writes is all capitalized United States of America. And if you read the Articles of Confederation, the style of this confederacy, it's capitalized the United States of America. They have to correlate these documents, because then it is the governance structure. The theory is, one of the theories is that there were two declarations of independence and you did them at the same time. And so the original Committee of Five, they were adamant, Adams and Jefferson, that they signed on the 4th of July. All the other signers say they signed on August 2nd. So the theory is that Thomas Jefferson set up the shadow governments that have been in perpetuity functioning since literally the founding of the nation. And that's how you can get yourself out of the mess that we're in, because you can bankrupt a United States corporation and funnel all the assets back in under the United States of America, and then reconstitute the Constitution, which would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when you talked about that last time, I went out and started doing some research on that, because you've got a whole lot of people who talk about that actually.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be specific for where to go to look at that, because everything on the web says that's all propaganda.
100%.
I mean, everything I could find said that that's all propaganda set up by the free people movement, or
there was like a sovereign people movement,
sovereign citizen movement. So it's all BS.
And if you go, so that's where you have to delve into the documents and go into the Library of Congress and then pull those out. And that's why I like Thomas Jefferson. Just looking to him. I mean, one, he knew that all of his letters were being read by the British and by enemies. So he created a cipher. So all of his letters that he actually wrote were on a cipher. And I always found it fascinating. When he left to go to Europe for 9 years and met with Napoleon, and then we end up purchasing the Louisiana Purchase, all these different things. He actually didn't leave from Virginia, which would make sense. He left from Boston. And I think when he went along his route, he gave the cipher to everybody, probably Adams, etc., so that they knew what his letters were actually saying. And again, it's kind of like the movie National Treasure. It's pretty fascinating to delve into, but it's at least a theory. And the U.S. debt clock is somewhat spelling that out, because they make that distinction between the United States and the United States of America. And if people pay attention to to Trump right now, there are times where he refers to the United States of America, and there are times where he refers to the United States. And the question is, are those legitimately legal distinctions of entities? And how do we know, and how do we decode that? And I would say the answer would be, you got to go into the congressional record and the Library of Congress.
Well, I may need to get those.
Yeah, I have some of the documents that I've done, and I don't know anybody that has said necessarily what I just talked about with the Declaration of Independence, but I can show you Jefferson's drafts, and I can show you his letters where him and Adams, they both passed away on the 4th of July, which is ironic, right?
I forgot that. Yeah.
And I sent you a link. There was one quote about that John Adams wrote, and I think it took John Adams a long time to realize what Jefferson had actually done. But it's interesting when you look at Jefferson's grave, because he only put 3 things on it. He put author of the Declaration of Independence, author of Religious Liberties of Virginia, and founder of the University of Virginia. Oh yeah, that's the Agreement of Secrecy, if people want to go read it. And it's ironic because the Committee of Five, who were the Declaration of Independence writers, were all on this Agreement of Secrecy. And some of the names are omitted. And so that's interesting to look at the signers of the Constitution versus the individuals who were here.
Well, and this is from a website that I found kind of interesting. Wythepedia, WYTHEPEDIA.
George Wythe was one of the original Committee of Five. There's a whole history about his importance in the founding of the United States. Yeah.
He was the first law professor in America.
Well, if everything is legal, if all the documents are legal, that's probably the guy you want in the room helping you draft them.
So interesting. Well, I hate to do this, but we're going to have to go because we're now approaching the 2-hour mark. But I do want to get in a couple more comments. This was a really great comment by Earl's daughter. Our gold is our children. Our silver is the legacy we leave behind. Invest. That was really good. You ought to use that one in the magazine.
Yes.
Shelley says, be careful with that and pay attention to his July, this was when we were talking about Trump, July 18th executive orders. Yes, he's coming after the Fed, but we must think to the future, perhaps even eschatology. Katie said, Doctor, you must read about the Bartlesville situation perpetrated by the son of James U. Blanchard III, leader of the Restore Gold movement, from gold to Bitcoin to blockchain fraud, and our AG won't touch it. And then she put the link in there. So
I'm happy to read that.
Yeah, V1 Substack, v1sut.substack.com. Robert said the parallels between the Roman Empire and the U.S. are undeniable. You don't have to be a prophet to say we're an empire in decline. And Julie says, remind me again why we have government: to protect liberty. What a racket. And then she says, our Constitution was written mainly by bankers and lawyers. Julia isn't like a Constitution fan anymore. My 25-year-old is living with us, his car insurance as much as his car payment, add-on rent, groceries, etc., and he can't survive. Wife hunting for him, need 2 incomes to survive. Sadly, it's not funny. I just went to the grocery store yesterday.
Price is still going up.
It's still going up. It's just unbelievable.
It's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy.
That I would tell people to at least think about. I've been thinking about it lately when referring to the Constitution. It's fascinating that we consider our members of the Senate and the House are members of Congress. A member is a corporate term that requires you to have a duty of care and a duty of loyalty to the corporation before the people. And the interesting part of that is the other terminology that you'll find is the electors. If you're elected, that's a different role.
Yeah.
If you're elected to a House, if you're elected to a Senate. So that minute of language, as much as we don't read those documents, could be could have major implications to why you see things play out the way that you do today, which is pretty interesting. So,
well, and Julia says Patrick Henry opposed the U.S. Constitution because he believed it concentrated too much power in a central government, threatening states' rights and individual liberties. And there still is an argument about that. And we can go into case law and what the judicial system and the Supreme Court has done to the Constitution, which has not been so much applying it, but recreating it for years. But that's going to have to be another discussion since we're at about time. But I have to tell you that this has been such a great show, and we have such a nice audience on today. And I'm so glad everybody tuned in for Eric. And if you didn't see the beginning part of that, please do that. And I'm going to throw this back up because I just really want to keep hawking your magazine. Let's not forget Red, White, and Blue magazine. You can get it at redwhitebluemagazine.com. On the very first page, you can subscribe. I'm gonna actually, I think, subscribe just because I want to be able to share it with somebody. I think I'm gonna get.
I have some being sent to you. We got some gear, so I'm gonna send you that.
But I would like to be able to share them with some people because I've got an next door neighbor. I'm going to turn her on to this too, because I think she'd like this for her kids. So guys, please do, those of you who are in homeschool co-ops, please do try this out. See what you think. I loved what Earl's daughter was talking about maybe making a homeschool co-op club, a Red, White, Blue magazine club. We're never going to get... Exactly. And she says, yes, thank you. I love information with substance and solutions. We're never going to change culture unless we make that effort. And this is that effort, but you have to apply the effort. So Eric's made the effort to get this out, he and his partners. So we need to make the effort now to get it out everywhere and to make sure that we're overriding what the culture's telling our young people right now. So Eric, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you for being a part of the magazine. That's so awesome.
Sure. Thank you for having me on. It was fun.
Well, and we'll do it again, probably another time. We would love to have you on. Maybe you and Michael can work together on a show for finance that we can actually build something that would be that we could have a webinar on.
Sure.
Because we do spend a nice chunk of money donated money on this program, which gives us the ability to have a webinar. And if you and Michael wanted to work on a webinar, I am sure we would be happy to get that out there and get people onto a webinar on finance. So let's think on that, you two.
Awesome.
All right. Anything else before we wrap it up here today?
Just check out Red, White, and Blue, and any subscribers we would appreciate, and always welcome to feedback too. So encourage kids to write into the magazine. We will. It's about them, so we want to showcase them as much as possible.
Well, Eric, again, we really appreciate you. Thank you for being on today.
Thanks.
Blessings. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, Miguel, anything you've got going for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm gonna be busy. I'm gonna be painting my car this weekend.
Painting the car. So,
but I do want to show you something.
Okay.
You know, we talked about yeah, leave it there. Take your side down.
Okay.
You know, we talked about Trump, and in the past, you know, we've done several shows on all these digital currency dollars, all these things. I want to show this because remember we did the whole deal with Trump's World Finance Token. You know, and remember he received as part of, you know, pumping that token, you know, and is all prior to passing the Genius Act and all that stuff. You know, he received 22 billion in that token, and I'll show you a little thing on that. But here's the danger in the future with these coins. So like Justin Sun, he's a guy that he's a big crypto guy. He's got his own blockchain Tron, and he's been in and out of all kinds of, you know, possible trouble in crypto, this and that. Well, anyway, he's got $100 million worth of Trump's Wolfie coin, and they froze it. They just completely froze it because they can. And that's what, you know, when we get into these coins in the future, there's good coins and there's bad coins. 99% of them are probably going to be bad. There are good ones that can't be frozen, can't be stolen, can't be, you know, they're anonymous. There's good and bad, but I'm just telling you, they're going to incentivize us and make us comply to whatever they want in order to use their coins. But this is kind of that danger of a corporation or an entity being able to issue their own coin, you know, that's going to go into our markets, be pegged to $1, you know, whatever. Now, World of Liberty Finance is not that type of coin necessarily, but just as an example, you know, when Trump signed the act, you know, we played the video. Remember the little commercial we played? I mean, with that coin alone, that coin for him is already worth $5 billion.
Yeah.
You know, 5 billion, just like that. So, I mean, and this is just the start, you know, this is just the start of that stuff. And it's going to get.
That's so disappointed me so badly. I mean, that's just a classic example of what we got. Everybody had a fit about Nancy Pelosi and her, you know, playing around in the market and getting the, and then here Trump does this, and where are the Trump people?
Well, he's not necessarily, you know, pinning Justin himself, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't play ball with whoever is in control of that blockchain, then you're going to lose, because they can do whatever they want to do to shut you down, freeze your coins, make it to where you can't do any trading, you can't buy. You know, that's just that evolution into mark of the beast, you know, the whole, you know, how do you have a global currency, you know, one world order type of deal? This is that evolutionary piece that is getting us prepared for that type of system, to where you can't buy and sell, because they can just click a button and say, oh, there's Michael Grande's wallet. We didn't like what he said today, so we're going to turn him off for a week. Same way, Jenny, that you get struck on YouTube. Take Jenny down for, you know, let's take Jenny down, make her jump through a bunch of hoops to participate back again in society. So, I mean, we're just going down the, you know, it's a super slippery slope, but we're going down there way too fast, in my opinion.
Way too fast. Absolutely. It is happening way too fast. And I think that's all intentional. It happens really fast so that people can't find ways around it or think it out, you know, so that they can figure out what's going on. So I think they're doing it on purpose. I mean, it's clear.
Yeah, that's another justification to return to actual constitutional money.
I agree.
The actual constitutional money that's been laid out. That's the only way, in my opinion, that we're really going to turn the country around, is you have to have a system fail with all this fiat, and you have to return back to actual value, and it's just like Dr. Snyder said, we've lost 99% of the purchasing power, the value of our money. That graph, instead of going this way, it should be going this way. From 1900. It should be going up. We should be increasing our purchasing value, our purchasing power, not decreasing it. So it's taking it out of our hands and putting it into a concentrated, cabal of people, whoever you want to call that cabal, whether it's, government assistance, the government, bankers, people above the bankers, whatever. But that's what, that's the issue, that's at hand here.
Well, and which is probably why you and Eric need to get together and do a webinar. I mean, we really need to work that out.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to get off of here. I love everybody who stayed on, everybody, and they're all our X followers. And by the way, if you're not following Noxie, Knoxie, on X, you need to follow Noxie. She's amazing. I talked to her yesterday. She called me. We were having a Twitter thing, and she called me yesterday, and we were talking about Palantir, which is one of your favorite topics.
Palantir.
Yeah. And she's got so much great information. I wish we could do something. We need to have a podcast just on Palantir and all of this information that Noxie has, because
Palantir, in my opinion, literally, Jenny, Palantir, Peter Thiel, he's supposed to be Mr. Patriot, all this stuff. I mean, they're literally anti-human, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's just me, but I'm just telling you, it's anti-human.
Yeah, they're technocrats. They're not, for sure. And when you think about Peter Thiel and our vice president and that she was walking me through all of that with our vice president yesterday, and I was like,
yeah,
ow.
Ow. The book really you read doesn't do justice to what really, I shouldn't say doesn't do justice, doesn't cover that entire relationship scenario in the whole grand scheme of things.
No. Yeah. So anyway, we can't get into that today, but I'm going to read. We've had quite a few. Julia said, great guests. Jenny, he should be a regular. We should figure out a way to get Eric on, but then hold on a second. My Trump disappointment syndrome grows larger each day. Mine too. And by the way, Lisa, I hope you're feeling better. Build a wall around DC. Love to do that. And Gracie said, fast enough that people don't notice until it's been done. And that's how I feel. Yeah. Gracie, you and me are on the same page there. CCP's already perfected the social credit scoring system by practicing on the Chinese. It's being implemented incrementally worldwide. There's no way to get around with that. We should. And then Lisa says this, we should have a regular show that focuses solely on Michael and finances once a month. And Gracie said we should call it Monthly Money with Michael.
Hey, MMM. Monthly Money with Michael, instead of MMT, which is the modern monetary theory, which is the BS that we live with. But on Trump, I don't necessarily blame Trump, because just like in the first round, he's a good guy, good-hearted guy. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to invest in America. He wants,
he wants to make money, dude.
Well, yeah, he wants to make money. There's nothing wrong with making money, but he doesn't understand this technology and what this technology can do. Just like he didn't have the right people around him, he doesn't have the right money people around him either, because like I've talked about with Bissett and Howard, Lutnick and all these other guys, these guys are in a totally different, they're literal predators. They're just financial predators, and they're going to take advantage of. It's just like that video, where I showed with Howard Lutnick. He's getting his hands in the pie of all the patents. Remember that, Jenny? He can't wait to get his hands into all the patents, that everybody needs to be paying for. So, You know, there's a whole different class
Okay,
of people, and
listening
he's
to
got
you
them.
because
He's
they're
surrounded,
trying
but
to come up with show names for you,
yeah.
so they stopped listening.
But I don't just say, hey, Trump's a bad guy when it comes to all this, because he's a genius when it comes to investing and real estate and things like that. But as far as like real economics with money and what the macro side with money, how it works, he doesn't understand that like he does
Okay,
with investing.
okay, I'm stopping you because I'm with Lisa, and that's all I care about is my perspective. So he says, and this is true. Think, Michael, he's wealthy enough to hire a slew of experts. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I'm not saying that he doesn't. I'm just saying that. Okay, here's my point of view. He's not the one behind it all. That's what I'll say. It's not his plan, you know, to bring in these currencies, to do all this stuff. They're just using him to implement this stuff because people will do whatever he says. To me, people, if he says, "Hey, the Genius Act is great. This crypto deal is great. This coin is great. This is great." People aren't going to question it because it's Donald Trump, because they trust him and believe him. That's what I think's happening. I think they're just using him. You know, at some point, they're just using him. He's being incentivized. His family's being financially rewarded, you know, pretty heavily because of it. But they're also using his power in that position to implement all of these CBDC, not the CBDCs, but the dollar, you know, the dollar pegged private coins that are coming and all those deals.
Okay, well, we're done now.
All right.
Lisa says possibly as this was put in place decades ago. Don't back down, Lisa. Your original comment was right because I agreed. So it has to be right.
Hey, remember, Jenny good, Michael bad.
No,
Remember that.
not at all.
Hey, we're good cop, bad cop.
No,
Remember.
we're not at all. But
Yeah, we are.
No, stop. But we do need to talk more about this. Whatever that's going to be, the MMM monthly, whatever that's going to be. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I will have, this is a promise. Now I'm just done with the whole thing. I will have libertyoklahoma.org website ready to buy tickets to the best thing since sliced bread, which is our Liberty, Oklahoma convention, November 13th through the 15th at Ocana. I'm going to have, by the time we have our podcast on Wednesday, all this stuff is going to be rolled out. You're going to be able to see who the sponsors are. If I don't do anything this weekend, that's what's getting done. I swear, I've already warned everybody. And do you remember who's on for Wednesday?
No.
Wednesday the 10th is Rob Miller, former Jinx superintendent, who's going to come on and talk about his desire to be the state superintendent. Yeah. So if you have anything to say about that, or you would like to make comments or have questions answered by Rob Miller, who is running for state superintendent, please tune in. Put that on there. I'll have all the stuff up for it on probably Monday. So it gets out so everybody can tune in. Is there anything that I've missed?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Then I think we can sign off for now and tell everybody have a blast weekend. Put your phones down, put your feet in the grass, and have fun with your kids, right?
And take a picture of you so I can document this.
Not me. I was talking about everybody else. All right, everybody. Have a blessed weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Bye-bye.